and it was just going.
Miriam.
So it's like, what? Are we being recorded right now?
Shooting.
Just, you know, like.
Are you gonna sit? Here, do that unnatural thing with your legs crossed on the couch. That's not you. All right.
My mother would yell at me for wearing a backwards hat right now. She'd be like,
let's take it off. I'm doing whatever you do.
I mean, I know my hair is not like.
Look at that. Look what I just did. I'm all fucked up.
I mean, I think I look better with a hat on or off.
I can't see a thing.
What did you do with my pad of paper? Do you know where you put it?
I don't know what you're talking about. You're talking to your dog?
Yeah. She stole my pad of paper. Okay, wait, hold on. This is LA pizza. This is New York pizza. Pizza lovers of all heights, welcome to the 2021 Slice Showdown between Noel and Miriam.
Showdown? I thought we were just having a friendly chat, Miriam.
Well, you're showing down the
this is just a conversation. We're not doing a demo. We're not making any pizza. We're just chatting amongst ourselves, trying to be natural so that we can teach home bakers what we've learned over the course of our short but very glamorous pizza careers.
I just have read like 20 books that tell me everything I'm supposed to know. They all contradict one another. And I guess I've somehow created success in baking at home, utilizing everything that's in those books, plus what I think it should be done. So, I mean, we've talked about this before, but I guess today we're going to talk about all the different things that make us successful home bakers and what some people like to refer to us as the most crustastic teachers in the industry.
No, nobody calls us that, Miriam, not yet.
Okay. So let me ask you this. If you're going through your whole kitchen as a home baker, what is the most important tool in your entire home for pizza baking?
That's a good question. People ask me that a lot, and I don't really have an answer. But I would say that if you're a beginning home baker, I would say the most important tool you can have is going to be a pen and paper, right? And the reason. There you go. So the reason I say that is that once you start writing things down and you become aware of the variables in the equation, you start to realize that there are things that are changing. Humidity could be one of them. Temperature could be one of them. There's so many things that are changing that once you start kind of tracking them, you realize that it's not so much the recipe, it has to do with those variables in your pizza equation. I would say that the other two things that are super important would be a thermometer and a scale, and we'll get into that later, right?
Yeah, I have most of my tools here. My infrared thermometer is currently misplaced in my pizzeria / apartment, but I do have this handy dandy thermometer that I bought that's always on my fridge. This one is for measuring the temperature of my ingredients, my water, but the other one tells me what it is in the apartment.
Super
68
important.
Degrees, that is the magic spot for my Sicilian pizza.
Oh, really?
Yeah, 68 degrees. Yeah.
How did you figure that out?
Trial and error. I was like, well, what it was that during the summer, I noticed that because the Sicilian pizza that I make is a room temperature. I do it room temp. I do not ferment it in the refrigerator. And I found that on the super hot days, it would just like blow up in the pan. But on the really cold days, it was like, come to life. And I'd find myself moving everything into the room where it was warmer. But when it's 68 degrees, it rises so perfectly in the pan that when I go to reball it in the mornings, I do a double proof. Literally, I'm able to just gently pick up the dough and move it all the way over. If it's hot, that dough is like, I'm sticking to the pan. You're going to really have to scrape me up.
Awesome. So that's actually a pretty good segue into, I think, our first slice of knowledge. Miriam and I are
the 8 slices.
The 8 slices of home pizza knowledge for home bakers, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about it. I think that home bakers there's this whole, I don't know if you say evolution of bakers that are starting to bake from their homes, and they're actually making pizza that gives the brick and mortar pizzerias a run for their money. So for me, like the pizza, I started on a baking steel with ingredients I found in a grocery store or any pizzeria would just scrape together and give to me. But now, like personally, I've got a 2-month wait list for pizza, and I'm like, it's just pizza. But people are like, no, it's so much more. I'm like, okay, fine. It's fermented for 72 hours. If you tell somebody how old your dough is, they suddenly are like, what?
All
Okay,
right, so
so
slice number
slice number
one,
one.
we have it divided up, right? So the way we divided this pizza up is that Miriam's going to take 4 slices and I'm going to take 4 slices. In fact, I'm going to take the first 4 slices, which is not very gentlemanly, is it? But, you know, we decided that I would kind of start the process because I'm more of a dough guy, right? And you would kind of finish the process because you're more into like toppings and that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
just for the sake of teaching home bakers, that's how we're going to try to do it today. Slice number one is a kitchen thermometer. And so I work as a pizza consultant, which means it's a really weird title. I don't really like it very much. Maybe I'm kind of like a pizza coach. And so before COVID, I used to go around and teach chefs how to make better pizza. And so sometimes they would hire me to come in if their dough wasn't so great or if they needed to improve their pizza. And sometimes I come in at the very beginning and help them build their kitchen and design it and hire all their staff and train them. But the one thing that's a constant is I make everybody use a thermometer. Right. And because like Miriam there, a lot of people are even home bakers, they don't realize that the temperatures are changing. Right. And so if the water temperature is changing and the room temperature is changing and the flour temperature is changing, these are the proverbial elephants in the room.
I was just looking at my notes to see what the temperature of my flour generally is.
And do you know?
Well, I try to keep it at 72.
You try to keep so you try to keep your flour at 72 and you try to keep your room at 68. What about your water?
Oh, it depends how the sink is feeling that day. So, I mean, okay, let's be real. So I'm hand mixing, which means that for me, if it's warmer in the apartment, I know I'm doing a bulk cold ferment. So I know that I want the dough to be 72 final temperature before I put it to bed for a couple days in the refrigerator. A different refrigerator, not the refrigerator that's in my actual apartment. I have another one that is just for dough, because if you open that fridge constantly, you are warming that fridge up, thus warming that dough, thus pushing that fermentation to go. Am I right on that?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Right.
It means I reviewed those books really well. But so going back to temperature, I know that the temperature in my refrigerator, I keep it at 39, but my water temperature measures warmer than that. So I know right now I can get colder water out of my sink than I can out of my fridge. It's really weird. In the winter, it's the total opposite. The cold water feels warm. Hand mixing, you just get, you know what it feels like. But I know that by the time I'm done, I always take my little home thermometer and I stick it in and I check the temperature before I put it to bed.
I love that. So if you are an experienced pizza maker like Miriam, you can mix by feel. And that's actually where you want to get to. You eventually you want to learn the rules so that you can forget the rules, right? Because the most important thing is not what your water temperature is or what your dough temperature is. It's how delicious your pizza is, right? And if it's not delicious and you want to make it better, usually the details of how to make it better is not your oven or your flour or your tomatoes necessarily. I like to start with the foundation, and the foundation for every good pizza really is the dough. Miriam talked about something really cool, which is that she even knows the temperature of her refrigerator. Most people do not. And I'll be honest with you, probably the temperature that you think your refrigerator is at, it probably isn't. And so I'm always tracking these things. So I leave water in my fridge that I can temp, because that gives me a much more accurate reading of my refrigerator temperature when it's closed, right? Because when you open your refrigerator, you're letting all the cold air out. You stick a thermometer in there, it's not going to be right. Same thing for your room. Your room temperature, like mine in Santa Monica, it's changing by 5 degrees here and there. You don't really know, but if you keep water out, that's a really good hack for home bakers.
Love that.
Yeah, it works really well.
All these years, my mom would leave her water out on the counter for drinking. Little did I know that I would meet you and I would discover that my mom, who was not a pizza baker, taught me a hack through you all these years later. Oh, that's
Chris Bianco's calling me. Hold on. Chris Bianco, are you there?
I'm here, brother. I'm here. I'm on Earth. I'm glued to the Earth as we speak. Destination semi-known, but
Hey, Chris Bianco, I'm in the middle of a Zoom right now and I'm recording you. What's up, Chris Bianco?
oh, what's that?
Woo!
Wait, let me look at my calendar. Let me look at my calendar.
I want to make sure I clear my schedule.
You are too sweet. You guys, I'm going out for my first trip to Chris Bianco's place, and I let Chris know in advance I was going to be there, and he actually called me back to let me find out when I'm actually coming. I feel like a superstar right now, Chris.
Oh,
I feel like
my
Steven,
God, you know,
I just feel like someone famous just called us. Really famous, pizza famous.
But hope everybody on this Zoom knows how lucky they are, and I'm sure they do. I mean, not because I call, because they're talking to you.
You're the best. I don't know if they can hear this, but I'm talking to Chris Bianco, and you're the best. You're my hero,
Okay.
and I can't wait to work with you. Wait, we're gonna do that. Perfect. Talk to you soon.
We'll see you soon, buddy.
Bye-bye. Okay, I hate to be a name dropper, but Chris Bianco just called me. Yeah!
Right, did you say Chris Bianco?
Yeah, Chris
I mean,
Bianco.
yeah.
Hold on, let me
What?
get my
No,
chow
I'm gonna show
tomatoes.
That. No,
It's a tomato war. Please hold for
Oh,
Chris
no.
Bianco. Wait a minute.
That's it.
We haven't gotten the
Ultra
tomatoes
Cucina.
yet. The sauce is actually slice number 7 or number 6, but
No.
I like them both.
Right
I
here.
like them both. We're back. All right. So here's the thing, and this is important. There's different ways to monitor temperature and change temperature depending on if you're a beginner, intermediate, advanced, home baker, aspiring professional, or professional. And I don't want to ruin anybody's pizza buzz, but the more you track the temperature of your room and your flour and your water and then your dough, you're going to start to see certain patterns, right? Just like Miriam did. And so eventually, if you get good enough and you pay close attention, you're going to realize that your dough performs better at a certain temperature, right? And so there's certain ways you can control your temperature and certain ways you can't. And so what I try to teach people is mostly you can't control the room temperature or the flour temperature, but you can control the water temperature. So that's what we do in my intermediate class is I teach people how to mix and nail their desired dough temperature, which we call DDT, by controlling your water temperature. But we're not going to get into that right now. In the beginner class, all I have people do is kind of track their temperature. So we start at the beginning of every mix, right, which we only do by hand in the beginner class with what's your flour temperature, what's your room, what's your water, right? And then at the end, usually, because people don't know we're going to do this, they end up with dough temperature anywhere between 65 and about 80 degrees, right?
How do they get 80 degrees?
Well, because if people are in a warm environment and their room is 80, right, and their flour is 80 and their water is 80, it's going to be 80.
Ooh, if their flour is 80, God help
But
them.
imagine if your room is
Oh, my
80 and
goodness,
your flour is
yeah.
in your room, so that happens. And so what's so interesting is that if people have never thought about temperature before, in the beginner class we mix and then we ball and ferment overnight, and the next day we all come back and make pizza. And the people with really warm rooms have really big dough, and the people with small with cold rooms have really small dough. But what I teach people is that it's not how your dough looks. I always say that uglier dough makes prettier pizza. And if people have perfect dough, you never know how the pizza is going to be. It's also the style of pizza you're going to make affects your temperature, right? So like, for instance, I noticed that if I'm making Neapolitan pizza, I want a warmer dough. And I also noticed, and I've been to a lot of Neapolitan pizzerias and worked with a lot of Neapolitans and also Italians, they like their dough to be warmer. So for Fahrenheit, those guys are mixing to 78 or 80. That's the norm. Miriam, guess what we're going to do for slice number 2?
We are going to hop on this lovely little kitchen scale.
Wow, you have a nice one.
The reason I got this is that if you use, I don't know if you have one of the other scale in front of you that everyone uses for measuring, like with a bowl when you're doing the flour and the water. But this is like when I'm measuring my yeast and my salt. Like I want to be very down to almost to the very grain. So I have 2 different scales I use, and this is one of them. And it's absolutely like game changing. I didn't realize your yeast can be off almost a whole gram, which is, especially in the summer, is hugely significant, or in the winter. It depends. I mean, it doesn't matter what time of year. It's a huge difference.
It's a huge thing. So slice number 2 is learning to use a kitchen scale. And a lot of people, some of the best people in the world don't use kitchen scales, right? So, you know, a lot of the best pizza guys and gals that I know, they start with a bag of flour, right? And then they have some kind of like container that there's a line on that somebody drew 25 years ago, and they fill up the water to the line, right? And then they have like a coffee cup for the salt, right? And then they have like an old, like, I don't know, something for the yeast. And that they just do it like, I know some people that measure yeast by fingers, right? Two fingers of yeast in the summer and 3 fingers in the
Oh,
winter.
really?
Yeah.
Now, I was in a pizzeria, I will not say which, where the person making the dough was not supposed to be doing it this way, but they basically just filled the bucket with flour until it hit a certain level. And I'm like, you could be off by like 100 grams.
At least.
I mean, at least. At that scale, you're talking like, you know, kilos.
Yeah. Buy yourself a kitchen scale, right? That little scale that you have is only like $12. How much is
2.
Okay, 2. But let's start with like a small format scale is good if you're measuring like a gram or 2 of yeast.
Okay, let's be real. This is where the brand new pizza baker is going to start off with, because they only know, if I'm going to get a scale,
yep,
you're going to get one of these. And this is made by Escala. You can get this on Scott Wiener's PizzaResourceCenter.com.
That's a good one.
You know, he's got every color imaginable. So that's where you start out with this one. And then when you really start to get into it and you're like, you know what, I'm ready to have pop-ups on Sundays with friends coming over, you're going to invest in the little die.
I love it. All right, so let's move on to slice number 3, right? Slice number 1 was get a kitchen thermometer. Slice number 2 was get a kitchen scale. Slice number 3, finally, we're going to get into pizza making, your dough recipe, right? And so a lot of people are in search of like the perfect recipe for pizza, right? I get this question all the time. Like, what's the best recipe for pizza? No such thing. How come? Tell us, Miriam, why?
Because a pizza maker is like an artist. You go to a museum. Do you think you're going in there to find the perfect piece of art? No, you're going in there to see what everyone's art is like. That's what pizza is like. So
I love that.
My dough recipe is going to be completely different than yours because I'm making something that is special to my heart. And all I want to do is try your pizza, which is special to your heart, and celebrate the fact that they are totally different.
Before your Mozart, before your Jimi Hendrix, right?
Did you say Mozart or Mozart?
Mozart. You say mozzarella or mozzarella?
Mozzarella.
Where are you from again? That's how they talk in Ohio?
My sister says the same thing. She's like, you do not pronounce that way. Okay, let's go back to Mozart.
Thank you. Back to Mozart. All right, so before your Mozart, right? Before your Jimi Hendrix, right? Before your Thelonious Monk, John Coltrane, whoever you're aspiring to be in the pizza world, before your Miriam, right? You got to learn to kind of live by the rules before you break them. Right. And so what I mean by that is that there are certain standard recipes for, let's say, Neapolitan pizza. Right. So you got to start with a recipe that already works. Right. There's Neapolitan, there's New York. And then even in New York, there's probably like 3 or 4. There's grandma pizza, there's Sicilian pizza, there's like big round pie pizza. Right. Go to another city, go to Chicago, go to Detroit, go to, I don't know, go to Rome. There's so many beautiful regional pizza styles out there. So you got to decide, you know, what to you makes the pizza style of your choice. Good. All right, so let me get into the most exciting part, slice number 4, my last slice before I pass the torch or the pizza peel to you, Miriam. After the recipe is the process, and that's the thing. If there wasn't like a proper process for each pizza style, I probably wouldn't have a job. Because everybody has a recipe that works or doesn't work, but you can make almost any recipe work. But the process is where people get confused. And I think it's really because most people don't understand how fermentation works, right? And so I didn't used to understand it either. I just thought you put the yeast in the dough, you mix it, it doubles in size, you punch it down, you ball it, and then you make pizza, right?
As I've been informed, I have been using my yeast incorrectly, but it works for me. So I think there's a lot of value in reading and learning from as many different places and, you know, websites and bakers, and take whatever classes you can. But it's all about finding a process and a recipe that works for you. So what I'm doing is not at all like with my yeast is the opposite of what the instructions tell you. But for some reason, and I just think it's magical, it works for me. And it was just by chance I happened to do that. But I guess now, are you handing me the other half of the tray with the other 4 slices now?
I mean,
doing
I
this?
don't.
Are we doing this? Doing this?
We're doing
this?
it. We're doing it.
We're doing it. Doing it. See
I
that
can't
word
understand
do?
if you're saying doing or doing, and if you're doing it on purpose or just to mess with me. What are you
Oh,
saying?
I'm intentionally saying we're doing this.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, if
This
you're a
is-
pizza person, you might as well just use the word dough for do. It's more fun. So, okay, going back. So the thing is that we're transitioning to the 5th slice of pizza, which actually still is dough. With dough process, after you've made that dough, the next step is what are you going to do to get it ready to bake? So if you're baking at home, your process is going to be completely different than a restaurant. Traditionally, in a restaurant, they have a ton of space. If you're baking at home, you have a refrigerator. So for me, I do a cold bulk ferment for a couple days because I have the space to leave a bin in the fridge, in one fridge. But the day that I bake, I will actually take that dough, I will ball it up and proof it.
Super important to understand. If you're proofing, you're quickening the process. And if you are refrigerating, you're slowing down the process. And this is the job of the pizza maker to know which to use when.
Yeah. So for me, I do a 60-hour ferment. Then I in a much colder, the temperature that is about 4 degrees colder where I ferment. So when I break my dough apart to proof it, I intentionally put it in the tray in the warmer refrigerator and let over those 8 hours, the ball that starts out literally as a ball, little ball, it grows into a disc. And then for me, it's perfect to stretch, top, and bake. The 6th slice is talking about what goes on the dough next, which is, I have a prop. So I will say chow, I absolutely love the flavor of chow, but for my preference and for the pizza I'm designing, I'm going with California and actually do a blend. You can see right there, the Magic 7-Eleven. I realized that my 2 favorite pizzerias in Ohio were using Stanislaus tomatoes. So part of the reason isn't just flavor, but it's my way of bringing Ohio into my pizza in New York, despite the fact that it's from California. And you know, in your head, you just looked at a map and you went like this, and then you're like that, and then you went like this. First of all, the sauce is probably one of the most important of the 3 ingredients to pizza. And, you know, it's like my dad was like, oh, what is my sauce? It's ragu and it's bragu. And then we pour it in and add a lot of ground beef. And then the magic ingredient, I'm so sorry, Dad, but you're never going to listen to this, is a handful of sugar. And I grew up in a Jewish house in Ohio. So like my dad would like put this sauce on the stove for like 8 hours and he thought it was like magic. And we're like, no, we draw straws as to who's not going to eat it when we get home. Sorry, Dad. I love you. Throw it away. No, none of that pre-made jarred stuff. It's filled with preservatives, sugars, too many herbs, and other things you just can't pronounce. But if you use a can of tomatoes, guess what's in there? It's tomatoes and
basil.
Yeah. Now I heard a rumor. Have you ever heard the rumor about the piece of basil that's in here?
You know, I've heard a lot of rumors. I don't know. No.
So the story I was told is that the reason the basil is in there is that when they were exporting tomatoes from Italy, that it was taxed as a fruit or a vegetable. But if they put an herb in there, it made it a sauce and they were able to avoid the tax. So then Americans adapted to putting that piece of basil in there, and it's kind of like a cereal box with the prize in there. You open up the can and who's going to get that lucky piece of basil?
Don't just go and pick out the expensive tomatoes in the store, or don't just go and pick out something that says San Marzano. You decide what kind of pizza you want to make, and then what kind of sauce goes on that pizza, and then what kind of tomatoes are right for that sauce. See what I'm saying?
Yeah. Now, do you see what I'm holding here?
You're holding the DOP. Are you trying to outsauce me?
I'm sorry, but look at that.
What is that? What is that?
Those are the seals. Those are the seals that say this is legit. Wait, where's the
How
seal?
come I don't have any seals? What is going on here?
Because yours isn't DOP certified.
Oh, man, I didn't know we were going to have a contest.
I always joke around that San Marzano tomatoes are like the Prada handbag in North America. 90% of them are fake. But this is actually this is a tomato that was certified in Italy to be growing in the soil of Mount Vesuvius.
Taught me something. All right, good to know.
Okay, all right. So guys, that's tomatoes. Let's talk about slice number 7. Let's get cheesy. Okay, so here's the deal with cheese. Noel, you said the same thing. What style pizza do you want to make? If I'm going to make a New York style, I'm going to go with the low-mo. If I'm going to make a Neapolitan style, I'm going to go with the free-mo. Fresh mozzarella, low moisture mozzarella. How are they different? Completely different. All right. One has a lot of oil. The other has none, unless it's some extra virgin Sicilian olive oil drizzled on top before it goes into the oven. When you're reheating a slice of pizza, guess what happens when you reheat that cheese? If you're using a low moisture cheese, which is like a block or the shredded cheese, that oil enables it to melt down. Whereas the fresh mozzarella, it's going to dry out. Fresh mozzarella is a water-based cheese. So when I prep it for pizza making, I actually cut it into little cubes, and that way that it can melt down, but I'm not going to like try and shred it. And then the low moisture cheese, I actually take a block of cheese and I hand shred it, because that stuff in the bag is coated in cellulose. Nobody wants extra oil, extra fat, chemical stuff on their cheese. That's why a dollar slice drips oil down your arm. It's pre-shredded cheese with cellulose. Listen, I know everyone likes a good deal. Cellulose is not a benefit. It is not something you're getting for free that you want. That's why you pay $2.50 a slice, not $1.
Another pizza knowledge bomb. Who knew?
We have one last slice to talk about, and that's the oven. What do you use to bake your pizza at home?
I have like a 1965 like Sears and Roebuck or Whirlpool gas oven with the pull-out broiler on the bottom, and I have a really big thick pizza stone, and I get awesome pizza out of it.
So for my oven, I'm using 2 baking steels. I have the bottom baking steel is 4 inches from the broiler, and then I have another another baking steel which is 6 inches above that. So when I bake Sicilian, I actually put it on the bottom, and the pan I'm using is 18 inches wide, and my oven is not 18 inches wide. So I have to actually bake the pizza at a 45-degree angle. But what I do is when I start the bake off on the bottom steel, and then I finish it off on the top steel. All right.
Amazing.
I think we covered 8 slices. So my slices, just to recap, slice number 5, we talked about the dough process when you're actually baking the pizza. Slice number 6, we went into sauce. What is the trick to a really good sauce? It's simplicity. It's finding a tomato. It doesn't have to be something doesn't have to have a certificate of authenticity to be a good tomato. You just have to like it yourself. We talked about cheese, low moisture cheese versus fresh mozzarella. They both have different purposes. They have very different flavor profiles. And then we talked about ovens.
I love that.
So,
I love that. Well,
right,
Miriam,
well,
let me.
This is the time to say goodbye.
This is the time to say goodbye. So I want to thank you for introducing me to so many beautiful new ideas in pizza. Every time you think you know it all, you meet somebody who teaches you all kinds of wonderful stuff. So thank you for that.
Noel, thank you for teaching me so much, so many new things. I don't even know where to start with slicing. But I am going to use some of the new techniques that we discussed on here, proper techniques, to see if they differ from my improper ones, or just it's all art. All right, well, as I like to sign off, I like to say, have a sliced day.